Hey, this is Marc. Nick and I spent a great day at EdCamp, Long Island, and this is another part of our series from the conversations that we had on that day. Enjoy. Okay, so here we are at session 2. Nick and I are hosting one of the sessions, and we're fortunate enough to have some people stop by. We have Patty Richter, Angela Luftig, and Michael Cotagnola, and we're happy to have them here and to discuss podcasts. So this is, I referenced before, this is like the coffee table book about coffee tables that Kramer had created on Seinfeld. So we're doing a podcast discussion, which is part of the podcast. So here we go.
Yep.
And we were just joined by Lee Goldman, who's rounding out the table. So we're here to answer any questions you might have about podcasting, and we've done this podcast for a little over a year, and this is our 25th episode. And so we have a little bit of experience doing this. By no means are we the experts, but we're happy to walk you through anything or answer any questions that you might have, and talk about how it could be used in the classroom or in any other means educationally.
Yeah, it really started like Mark and I would just be driving home from work on the phone, talking about school all day. And then we said, well, why are we just talking to each other about education? Maybe somebody might want to be interested in hearing some of the things that teachers talk about and current issues. And that's what we've tried to make it, where it's been as topical, whenever there's a story in the news that's related to education, whether it's, APPR or,
Common Core,
it could be anything.
Or the tenure laws out in California that have been challenged.
But a lot of the students do listen to podcasts. I was surprised. It's becoming a pretty a big forum, I think, for kids will come in talking about different ones that they share with me. So I think it's becoming more of a positive medium for people to learn from.
So don't be Mike shy.
No, I'm not. I have a couple questions actually. First of all, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. How often do you guys put up podcasts? How long are they typically?
Well, for us, we try to.
Is it random or is it scheduled?
Well, it depends who you ask. I'm more of like I want to try to do it on a schedule, but life always gets in the way.
Of course.
So despite our best of intentions, our original goal was to do maybe 2 a month or something like that, or maybe more. That turned into sort of 1 a month, and then depending on if it's testing season or Nick teaches AP, for example, or I'm an assistant principal, and when it's Regents time or whatever, it's just impossible for us to kind of get the time to do it. So sometimes it turns into 1 every 6 weeks or 8 weeks, but we do try to get back to it as often as we can, as long as time allots.
And do you link them through your school's websites at all individually, or?
When I was doing my own podcasts to review for my classes, that was linked on the school webpage.
Oh, that's awesome. So the students could go to it.
Right.
And
So what happened for me is, as an AP teacher, when I had 20 kids in AP, 25 kids, it was very easy to review. But that was 20 years ago. Now I have like 115 kids in AP. So to get every kid to be able to review at the same time just wasn't possible. So we started, myself and the AP World teacher, we started to just podcast our review classes. So we would actually do what Mark and I are doing now, but with kids in the class. So let's say 20 kids showed up, but then I would put it on, whatever we did in review that day, we would put it onto the school website, and the kids loved it. And like I said before, I've now kind of moved on to doing YouTube videos instead for review, and also just kind of to work on like the flipped classroom. I don't know what you teach.
math.
Oh, okay. So you can, are you familiar with the flipped classroom?
Yes.
Now?
My wife does that with her science classes,
It's
actually.
great. And the kids love it. There's a program that I use, Camtasia, which you have to pay for, but there are free programs also. And it's the same concept of a podcast, only with something visually for them to look at, and that goes up on my school website as well. And as far as you asked about the length of time, if we're doing it together, I think Mark and I disagree on this too. I try to keep it shorter. I think I just think people's lives are so busy. I try to keep it at 30 minutes. Mark tends to, I think, want to go a little bit longer sometimes.
Like Gandhi length.
As far as students, when I'm ever doing it with students, I've tried to use like the 15 to 18 minute rule. I even asked them, like, what do you think's a good length of something that you could honestly listen to for a decent amount of time? And they all feel like between 15 and 18 minutes. That's kind of like the TED Talks version of,
Yeah.
the length.
Makes sense. My sister will listen to podcasts while she drives. So if it's a
Right.
long drive, you can listen to a longer podcast. If it's a short drive, you're obviously not going to get through it.
There's so many out there now.
Oh, of course.
It's unbelievable. I mean, even myself personally, all the podcasts I want to listen to. I mean, I listened Serial. I was obsessed with. That was the one about the murder in Baltimore. I couldn't get enough of that. And then that kind of opened me up to how many there are out there.
You're doing a terrible job promoting this particular topic.
So, but that's yes.
Oh, I have a question. My name is Patty, and my future question, which should give you time to think about, and then I'm going to ask a more direct one, is maybe like a sample review type thing. If you could come up, like, what would that entail? But my immediate question is, what would be a basic setup for someone starting that and mate for a teacher to do for her classroom or his classroom, and then an ideal setup? I see what you have here, which might be for a classroom more of an ideal, but what would be the basic tools and to get going on something like this?
So I'll share with you what we do, and I'll try to use everything. We obviously don't have a major budget for this.
Right.
There's nobody sponsoring the show. Everything, we have a website, and that's all on us, and we're the ones kind of bill on that. But just to keep things as inexpensive as possible, we use GarageBand on the Mac, which is free, and we record the tracks like you would, anything else. The microphones that you see in front of you, I mean, we have two AT2020 microphones that Nick and I have, and the microphones in front of you are the Samson Go mics, which are almost like, you almost can't tell the difference, even though the mics that we're using are a little bit more expensive, but those mics are probably like $35. So, and the quality is excellent, and they're tiny, and you can even clip them onto things like books or onto your shirt or onto the laptop, screen. So very easy it's portable, not very expensive. Quality is excellent, and we just put it into the USB port, and then it reads it. And basically, you change the setting. So instead of using your internal microphone, you use this microphone, and it gives you really great quality, and it's USB. And then what we'll do after it's over is, I'll just throw it into some editing software. Like I like to use Final Cut, but you could literally use anything that you're comfortable with, and I just kind of trim it to work. Sometimes we stumble on words, and sometimes we stammer and want to start over again, or sometimes we go off on a tangent and like, wait, where did we wind up here? How did we wind up here? And go back and cut that. And then you just export it, and it's in MP3, and you can post it literally anywhere. So we're on iTunes, and we're on our website, but you can post it on your school website, and it's just like putting a music file.
But we did create our own website, and we used it's WordPress.
Okay, yeah.
Is the hosting site, and then so there's like a monthly fee for that also.
Right.
And I think that was based on the number of hits we thought we were going to get, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, but the number is tremendous. I mean, it's like
Yeah.
in the hundreds of thousands or something like that before you go into the next level.
But,
So if for Serial, for example, they have to have a whole different kind of hosting structure, but for us,
Because they're gonna,
we don't have
yeah.
to worry about that.
And even if it's something you consider as like an assignment for students to create their own podcast, they're so familiar with the technology, they're
Right.
so much better than us, that they could create their own, versions and have them sent to you in a file.
Thank you.
And then you were asking about the review.
Yeah,
By
like
the way, they
what,
can do it right on the voice memo so
The
you don't
phone.
even technically need a
Right.
microphone. You could use the voice memo on your phone if you have an iPhone or
yeah, I'm
any other
Android.
phone.
I have a voice recorder. That's
Yeah,
standard.
same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that will also kick out an MP3. I mean, granted, maybe the quality is a little bit different if you're a stickler for that, but it's negligible on the listener end.
Like I know our music teachers are actually having the kids record their performances at home as
That's smart.
assignments and sending things that way as well. So there's so many. I mean, it's endless.
My
But you-
students just use their phone and they record to
That's
me
great. Yeah, and how do they send it to you?
through, they upload it to Google Classroom.
Okay. Oh yeah, you're always East Williston.
Right.
That's we just got finished with the tech lady. So that's great. The review you were asking?
Yeah, like, is that going to be the same 30 minutes? Like, be 15? I know you said your students like between the 12 and 18 minutes. Are you just hitting topics or?
Right. So if I'm utilizing like the flipped classroom model,
Okay.
and I want them to watch something at home so that I can do something in class the next day that's more hands-on, activity-based, creative. That's how I use it during the year. I'm just trying to be realistic about their workload and their sports responsibilities. So that's why I try to keep it at 15 to 18 minutes. As an example, I might give them a video to watch comparing Booker T. I'm a social studies teacher. So comparing Booker T. Washington to W.B. Du Bois and their different views on how African Americans should respond to the Jim Crow era. So instead of just telling them that in class, because you do have to deliver information, I have them watch a video that I made, and they watch it at home, and that's what I try to keep at 15 to 18 minutes. Then they come into class the next day, and the activity, and I answer any questions, but then the activity is considering it was like during the Ferguson protest, considering all the racial strife right now, create a dialogue between those two men, imagining that they were alive today. How would they react given what their views were at that time? How would they react today to how African Americans should respond to the problems? And that's the flipped classroom model. So that's an example of that. When I'm reviewing for the end of the year, I tell the kids, I'm reviewing, I'm helping you, so I'm not going to put a limit on it. I mean, if you want to watch, if it happens to be an hour and a half, it's an hour and a half. If it's 40 minutes, it's 40 minutes. You can watch it, when you want to.
And the beauty of that is that they go back and they re-listen to the things that they need help with or that they didn't get the first time. Or maybe on the second listen, all of a sudden things start to click. I'm like, oh, that makes sense now that I hear it the second time.
It's amazing. Like I because they all have their phones, and now we're starting an iPad initiative, they're walking in the halls and they're listening to you as they get ready to study for a test. Instead of sitting in class and just reviewing, I don't waste time ever reviewing for a test in class because there's no need to. I review either in a podcast or on a YouTube video, and that's it.
And they do it in their free time. Doesn't have to be in the class.
That's what they do, and they're walking in the halls. They tell me they're listening to it. I can see how many views my YouTube video hits. How many hits there are. I don't think there's people all over the country watching it yet. So, and that's so it's a good way of utilizing the technology more efficiently. And our time in the classroom is limited, so I don't want to just sit there and have to review with them. This is an example.
If it's something like math where you can't just describe it in a verbal sense, they actually need to see it and hear you. So, something like a screen capture software like a Camtasia, or you can even do for free if you have a Mac. I know it's the QuickTime. You can just do a screen recording right off the QuickTime. So just open up QuickTime like you would if you put in a movie file, and you can literally drag the box open to fill whatever part of the screen you want to record. And then you can go ahead and if you have a pen or a stylus or whatever it is, you can use that, or however it is that you would normally draw onto your screen. And then you can basically go over almost like creating your own Khan Academy and turn that into something that the students can use to practice or to review. And then the beauty of that is that they listen to it until they get it.
Yeah.
And I have a teacher in my school who started doing the flipped classroom a couple of years ago, and I remember overhearing a conversation between her and one of the parents who had come up for a conference, and the parent said, I know your voice because I hear it throughout my house all night long because my child keeps listening to your videos over and over again. So that's a great thing, and
that's awesome.
Being put to good use.
And once you get used to it, like for me, it would be difficult to not be able to teach with it. It's become such a part of my routine. And the kids are used to it as well. And they really, the first time they go through it, they thank you. I just gave them an essay on Friday, and I made the whole review, and they said, I couldn't believe how helpful this was. I watched your video 7 times just to keep going over and over it. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get the kids to be involved
in their own education,
in their own education. But again, they can do these things also. So you can give them assignments that's requiring them to use the technology.
Do you ever podcast your lessons, your daily lessons, like
yes.
as they're going on, and then maybe edit?
I do that, yeah.
Okay.
That's there's really 2 of us in my building. It's the AP World teacher and myself. We're the ones that have been like the leaders with this. And how sometimes kids are there's a mass, field trip or for whatever reason, there's a lot of kids absent for some reason, we say to the kids, we'll just podcast the lesson and just put it right up on the school website. We do that a lot, because it's difficult, when the kids are absent and they think, well, what did I miss? I can't just sit down and give you the whole lesson. I don't
smart.
mind. Yeah, it's just
It's a great idea.
yeah. So what we used to do is just wear a basic microphone and just upload it right to the school website as easily as that. Video casting would be a little bit more challenging, the class. So that's why podcasting works better.
A little more time to set that up. It's not as spontaneous.
Right, yeah, it's just, it's just a little bit more challenging.
So you could wear this microphone and do it. And
Oh,
connect it.
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's very simple. And it just goes right up to, we have School Wires, which is our school website, but we also have Schoology, which is a learning management system. That's been extremely helpful because that kind of does almost everything. I don't know how familiar you are with learning. It's similar to Google Classroom in that respect. So it's just all ways, I just look at it as ways to make the process easier for you as a teacher and more beneficial for the student. And that's, and these are things Mark and I talk about. When we're on our podcast, we have discussions, about these things. So that
And the occasional argument.
yeah, we do disagree every now and then.
Well, what good if you didn't have a discussion?
Of
You're both
course.
agreeing with each other. There's what's there to
Yes.
discuss.
Yeah.
Do you have a list of resources somewhere, a Google Doc or something that you use? But I mean, you're talking about a lot of resources.
For each show, Mark creates a Google Doc as
Okay.
like that we just share with each other,
Okay.
and we use that as like the basis.
Right.
So like if there's an article about a school.
No, I meant resources to create podcasts and
Oh,
editing
Oh,
and
we
all
don't,
of those.
but I could make
Yeah.
one and put it on the website if you'd like.
Thank you.
What is the website?
It's stateofedpodcast.com, and you could also find it on iTunes in the
Okay.
podcast section.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea.
Yeah, that's a really good idea.
You're welcome.
Well, Mark
For
is
Nick
the
to do,
tech
it's a good
guy.
idea, I think.
He's the tech guy, so he's. Well, the teacher has more work than the assistant principal, right? So, I mean,
Here we go.
do you have a stack of 115 essays to grade this weekend?
Can I ask everybody to cover their ears for a second?
We were talking about those arguments they have.
Yeah.
And they were-
Yeah, this is what one of them looks like right now. It's starting.
But we met in the same department. So that's how we became friends. We sat next to each other, and Floral Park was the first place, and then he got promoted. And I'm still at Floral Park. Happily. Happily at
Some days it
Floral
feels
Park.
like demoted, but like yesterday with the
Oh, yeah.
homicidal
So-
clowns that were running around
Is that
the
your
country.
name?
That was
Oh.
everywhere.
Oh,
was
yeah.
every clown thing.
There was-
That's everywhere. Never mind.
That's for another show on homicidal clowns. Anyone have any other questions? We have a few additional people who joined us, so welcome. Welcome. No, please. That's the beauty of EdCamp. You kind of come and go as you please.
Yeah, you can leave when you need to also. But we've enjoyed it. It's good for our, I think, friendship. Obviously, it's great, but professionally, just to have the dialogue about, because I think when I look at all the people here today, these are all people who are eager, with their job, who just love being teachers. I mean, who's giving up a Saturday?
That's right. They weren't sent by anybody to
And it
come.
reassures you when you go back to your own school and you see people who maybe don't feel that same way or who aren't as enthusiastic. But there are so many people out there that are so committed to making this, I think it's the greatest job in the world, but it's got more challenges now than it ever has. There's so many people working against us. So, and these are some of the things we talk about, because it is almost like we try to create this utopian view of education. We're trying to fix every problem with our discussions because we think we have all the answers.
Sure. Well, I think we do, but I guess the most interesting thing for me about this podcast is that it's really not only sort of capture. That's not the right word, is it? What's the word I'm looking for? Encapsulates. Thank you. Our conversations. I'll edit that out. It encapsulates our discussions that we've had for years on the phone. Driving home to from work and whatnot about the problems and so on. And instead of just sort of complaining about it to one another, we thought we would do something constructive and positive and try to at least express our true and sincere feelings about what could be and what ideally should be in education, and try to point out maybe along the way some of the people who are getting in the way of or impeding in that process, and preventing us from getting to our full potential. And the other part of it is just meeting a lot of really nice people. We've been very fortunate to have some guests, and they've been very illuminating and enlightening for us. And I know I don't want to speak for Nick, but I will in this particular case. We're both like, and it sounds trite, but we are lifelong learners, and we are always waking up each day trying to figure out what don't we know right now and what can we learn. And then once we learn something that's exciting, we want to share it with everybody. And that's sort of how I feel, my role as an administrator. And certainly I know that Nick feels the same way in his role as a teacher, because ultimately we're both teachers, and we'll always be teachers, regardless of what title, is written above the door. But so to me, that's been one of the most rewarding parts of the podcast, in terms of how we've done it.
Yes.
I think it's fantastic. I always said, when I was commuting back to Brooklyn from Limerick, my 3 hours of commuting
On the Belt Park,
I was
right?
saying to myself, as much as I love Howard Stern and Mike, how great would it be to just listen to educators talking, getting ready for the day. So I'm seeing here you guys have 24 episodes.
Yes, so this is 25.
So how? Oh, we're on right now.
We are. If you want to come and talk a little closer into the mic so we can hear you.
How often would we expect an episode to? Are you weekly? Are you monthly?
How long do I expect us to do an episode, or how long does Nick expect us to do an episode? There's two different answers.
How often? How frequently do you?
We tried to. Mark was hopeful for once every other week to a month. It hasn't always worked out that way, and I'm probably the one to blame for that, as he just hinted at. So,
It was subtle, though. I don't think anyone picked up on it.
it's the paper. I mean, it really is. If I didn't have to grade them, but we're ambitiously. We hope.
Nick
to
thinks
be,
the classroom observations write themselves, apparently. We can go tit for
Where's
tat.
the principals also? Sorry, you were just saying.
Oh, okay, good. Thank you very much.
So we're hopeful to push it a little bit further, as time goes on. I get a kick out of when my students listen to it, and they come in and they'll say, "Oh, I heard you and your friend." They don't know him, and they give me some good, nice critiques about what we talk, because we forget, like, we have future teachers in our classroom, and I get notes from former students who say, I found one of your podcasts and listened to it, or saw one of your YouTube videos and I used it in my class while I'm student teaching. I mean, that's how we make education better, by just spreading it out as much as possible. And that's what's great about podcasting or videos now. There's just such an amazing way to connect with people. So I remember once when I was doing the review podcasts, and the kids thought this was a little creepy at the time, but a guy just sent me an email from Montana. And he said, I was just looking for some interesting stuff. And it was just on our school website, so I didn't think anybody had it. And I really enjoyed, your style and your rapport with the students. And I was wondering if there'd ever be a way that we can video cast,
Probably my brother.
but that's the world we live in today. You can connect to anybody.
Right.
So.
And to speak to that, every now and then I'll glance at like a geographic report of like who's listening to the show. And it's unbelievable what's happening. Like, we have people in England listening to the show, and people across the country listening to the show, and someone from Australia listening to the show. I mean, so that's crazy, for me. I remember one time I had written an article that had gotten published, and in one of the educational magazines, and I got a letter from someone in Indonesia, an email from someone in Indonesia asking for permission to reproduce the thing, and I'm like, you could do what everybody else does, or just take it and don't even ask. So then I would joke to my wife that I'm huge in Indonesia right now, I'm trending, and that got me no cred whatsoever at home.
Take out the garbage
I still had to take out the garbage. I thought at least
Yeah.
I'd be one night without garbage duty, but it turns out I need maybe a bigger country, although there are a lot of people in Indonesia.
Yeah, and I like for my students to see that I'm ambitious, that I'm trying to make a difference just beyond being, in that class. And I think you try to send a message to them that everybody should always just be working harder and being positive and optimistic, and really trying to promote, good change in education. And I think my students, I have so many AP kids, so they're such, high achievers, and they're very, very talented and very smart. And a lot of them want to be teachers, which I think is a great thing, because I think a lot of teachers don't feel great about where we are in the profession today. And I think we need to change that with more on positive talk. And that's what I was saying before some of you got here. A day like this is so exciting because it's people who really are committed to learning something or just engaging with people who feel great about their jobs.
What sessions have you all attended today, and what have you already seen or heard that you feel like you can take with you and back to your schools and your classrooms?
I attended a seminar on just using Twitter in education, and the two presenters they were just talking about how you can use one of there were two presenters from different schools. One of them where the school embraced Twitter, and one of them where the school kind of shunned it because they felt the students weren't going to use it properly. Mm-hmm. And you had a dichotomy there of different ideas. But the one from the school, that didn't approve Twitter, said she likes to use it because you can get into discussions, and the students, whether we allow it in the school or not, they're using it. I mean, it's irrelevant. You don't whether you give them permission, you might not give them permission in the school, but the moment they're out the door, they're on it. And if you can get them to use it responsibly and use it for things that are educational based, and treat them like adults and get them to move forward, you're not just educating them in social studies and math and chemistry. We're educating them as how to be adults, and to use these resources responsibly and for their education. And they were really, it was a good sales pitch. It was really good. I was really intrigued by it.
And if they use them responsibly, then they wouldn't be like adults. They'd be better than adults. Adults use them completely irresponsibly.
And it doesn't mean you can't follow any celebrity or athlete or anything like that, but it means that you're still, if you type in the hashtag, Chem 101 or whatever it was, you can then get to do a discussion about something you did in class. And like you said, students that are absent can kind of get caught up. They can kind of review things, and it was pretty good. It was really good. And the one gentleman, Joseph Wiener, he said that his school embraces it, and they do use it for educational purposes, and you can retweet things and keep the students interested, and it kind of keeps them active and interested in it. Mm-hmm. And anything you can do to keep them active and interested and get them to embrace it, like you said, take responsibility for their own education. If you don't embrace the technology, they're going to use it, and you're going to be left behind, not the other way around. So.
I run the DOE Twitter chat every month. We're having
Nice.
one next week. So until you start using it and feel comfortable, you're not going to feel comfortable giving it to your students.
Of course.
So I recommend sitting in on a Twitter chat. You can search any subject, and you don't have to be part of it. You can just lurk and keep following the hashtag for the hour or the half hour, whatever it is. But that would be the one gateway into Twitter chats. Because it's a little intimidating to say, all right, we're going to start playing with Twitter in a classroom until you feel comfortable.
Of course.
So
Of course.
I would suggest going to a Twitter chat. I'll plug mine. We're having ours next Thursday at 3:30. New York City, NYC Schools Tech Chat.
Hold on a second.
I didn't come up with the hashtag.
The microphone. Say that again. Speak into the microphone, please.
Hashtag NYC Schools Tech Chat. Our hashtag is so long you can't tweet anything longer than 5 words. It wasn't my idea, but it's where I've grown my learning network. We raise questions, and it's just where I start getting resources for a lot of things too. So I would recommend, there's Saturday morning chat, there's Sunday chat, you guys must be aware of a bunch of
I'm
them.
going to prepare you now.
Oh, girl.
He's going to ask you to be a guest on our show. Just so you
Okay.
How did you get started with that?
I went to a professional development thing, and we had to go around the room and give our Twitter handle. And when I didn't have one, it was like I was a leper. So they dragged me kicking and screaming into Twitter. And then I just, that's me. And I'm with a lot of people in the DOE, and they said we need to have one. So I volunteered to do it. But I went in kicking and screaming into Twitter. I was very reluctant. But it has become a lovely thing. I don't follow celebrities. I keep it professional. And it's just it was described to me as it is a fire hose of information coming at you. You can't keep up. Don't try. You'll just hurt yourself. Dip your toe in every once in a while. Get something that's inspiring or useful or resourceful, and run away. and
So
just
you
play
can't
with
track
it.
the whole feed, then it's just too much, right?
No.
Okay.
I have almost 1,000 followers at this point.
Wow.
So, and I follow even more.
2001.
So once you start following one person, then you see who they're following, and it just grows exponentially. So you can't keep up. Just dip in every once in a while, get something inspiring, and move out. So that's my intro to Twitter. But I do find it to be a great resource, and it would be a great resource in the classroom.
I also recently discovered that you can use Twitter to watch like entire live concerts. Like I watched Springsteen at MetLife, and just used the hashtag and kept
Yes.
jumping from people, person to person who was
Everyone's videotaping it.
videoing the concert, and I got to see the whole show. Which is
Is that through Periscope or is that just through Twitter?
some people are using Periscope, but some people are just posting on Twitter. But I think a lot of it was Periscope. It's everything's so integrated now, so it's just impossible to know even what you're looking at.
So you
just
saw
watching
the
video.
same song from 12 different angles.
Right.
The people on the floor, the people
Yes.
in the nosebleeds, you got to see
I
that same
enjoyed
song.
the front row view better than the nosebleed view, but yeah, it was pretty incredible. But I never even thought to do that, and I've been on Twitter for a long time, but I never thought to kind of like put together this patchwork of all the people who were there and utilize them to watch the concert. I'm sure Springsteen's not too happy about it, but there were 70,000 paid people there.
As long as you weren't doing the recording.
That's right. Well, I mean, I remember, it's funny that you mentioned that. I remember back in the day where they used to frisk you at a concert, so you didn't bring any recording devices with you. And now everybody has them, so it's...
Forget it.
The
Yeah.
dam has burst, there's no going back. But what was some of the other stuff? I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I was gonna jump on something you said, and I think regarding the social media and coming from a district that just had a recent issue with Twitter. We're trying to teach our children and our students the responsibility of what they put out there, because obviously now with anything that they're saying, even regarding, I'm also a sports official, even regarding coaches or officials, you're going to get yourself into trouble. Someone's going to see that somewhere, especially if you start using those hashtags. And sometimes they don't get it, and I know some districts wanted to use this recent situation in some of their classes that are in their tech classes. Some were like, go for it, because this is showing how even adults make poor decisions. And then there becomes the issue, well, this wasn't a page tied to my professional page, or this wasn't this. But then as soon as you start hashtagging things that involve where you work or students' names, now you're opening yourself up. And it's the same thing with the students. Don't always get that it's out there. They think, oh, Snapchat, it's only out there for a few minutes. No, it's out there permanently for the rest of your life.
Some of our former congressmen don't get that either.
Yeah, I know. So those are perfect examples. But sometimes they seem it's like it's so out of touch, it's not them. But it's like trying to bring that down to something where they can actually see it affecting them.
Right. I think Lee had mentioned it. I'm sorry. I think Lee had alluded to it a few minutes ago. Where we have an obligation to teach the young people of this country in our classrooms how to use these tools effectively and appropriately. And I think I've used this example before on the podcast, but when I was in school and I passed a note to my neighbor and I got caught, my teacher never once said, don't ever bring your notebook and your pencil into school.
Of course, exactly.
I was punished, but then I was taught to use it appropriately and I was held accountable. So I think the same holds true. Of course, it's much more difficult to do it with this technology, and these tools are so much more powerful than a piece of paper and a pen. So that magnifies the difficulty of
Common
what the
Sense
task is.
Education has a lot of digital citizenship resources, games, and lesson plans for just such situations.
What's the site?
Common Sense Education. They're kind of big.
Oh, I think I just heard about that from ASC Day. I just came across that.
Did the Twitter presenters talk about having separate accounts, your personal and professional?
Yeah, she did. They both had personal accounts. They both had professional accounts. But the one she says she has a personal account. She barely uses it because the only really reason she's even on Twitter is for. I made the mistake of following. I'm a sports fan. I follow sports writers, and my Twitter feed became inundated. And I created a second account because it was almost impossible to filter out what I wanted to.
Right.
And I can't. I mean, the other one now is just like it's everybody's podcast and talking about this person, and I get to hear about how bad the Jets are every day, and that's wonderful. So, but I don't.
Do Do you need a podcast to know how bad the Jets are? Or
No,
just sort of
no.
pick up on that
I
on
have
Sunday?
I have 2 eyeballs. I'm good.
They're gonna win this week, so don't worry.
But if to the one that I now use professionally is, and I have the EdCamp
Feel
and
free to share it here, by the way, if you'd like.
it's just at Lee_Goldman. I mean, it's not like anything crazy. I just follow people. Nobody follows me. I have nothing to say that's important. I just kind of take pictures and tweet things from like Selly and EdCamp and things like that. But
See, the first time I used Twitter, a student told me to use it as a way to keep up with the class. So I made mine like AP US. And then now with the app Remind, I don't know if you're familiar with that. So Remind, I don't really use Twitter that way to communicate with the kids anymore because I can just text them with that free app, which is incredible. If you
Yeah, it's awesome.
it really, isn't it? I mean,
I use it for the parents also.
oh, that's
I send
great.
out grades. We don't have a portal at my district, but our union hasn't agreed to the portal.
Okay,
So we have it available to us, we just haven't agreed to it.
right.
So I use the Remind to send out grades to the parents.
Oh, that's great.
Oh, wow.
So I have a separate parent account and a separate student account, and I send out separate messages based on that. It's awesome.
Ooh, I gotta do that.
I send
That's a
out
great
my
idea.
answer keys using that. I send out everything. It's awesome.
Wow, okay.
And they text me back.
Yeah.
They text me math jokes. It's awesome.
Oh, but I like the idea of setting up something separate if you want to just mention something to the parents.
Yep. And you could choose one parent at a time, so it's a parent communication also.
Oh, that's great.
Best app ever.
Yeah. I completely agree. I mean, before you guys got here, a student was just sending me something about the play Hamilton because I, told them how obsessed I was, although Marc is even more than me. But it's just great to be able to communicate with them, and it's easy. I think sometimes teachers get a little bit overwhelmed by it, but it's just so quick. We all have our phones on us all the time. So.
A teacher I worked for, or subbed for in Smithtown was marine science teacher, and so her to start would be like, okay, if you follow me on Twitter, you know, an extra, you get 1 point extra, whatever it was, extra credit for this, and then start setting up the links to other, current events in oceanography or anything. So in articles, so that would be another form of getting extra credit. Go onto the Twitter, read this, do something, different activities. So she was always retweeting, something, following this whale or following something, and tying it into the curriculum in ways for the students to not only learn more, but then she found some of the students were just reading the other articles as well. It became more embraced into it.
Right.
First getting them to read it for a little extra credit points. And
That's great. So, all
What are your Twitter handles?
right.
We're at SOE Podcast. And I also have, my personal one, and then I have, this one. I actually have a few of them because I run them for my school, and so I'm constantly jumping back and forth to, different Twitter handles. And I always have to make sure that I triple check before I write anything which one I'm actually on, so
That's
I don't
why I
wind
only
up.
have one.
Yeah.
I couldn't,
Yeah.
I don't have enough brains to go around.
Just, is there any tips for someone that wants to start podcasting for their classroom or even using it in a flip, sense? Just any tips for someone new?
In terms of the technical aspects, or just like
No, not
suggestions on-
technical. That's just in terms of, what you would, some of the benefits right off the bat.
If you're using it for your class, number one, be yourself and be personal. The kids like that. They, when I first started, I was trying to be very, straightforward and
Professional,
clinical,
right.
and they said, "That's not you, Mr. Simone. Like, be who you are." And you never laughed. You didn't, and so be yourself. It's okay to. I personally think if you're using it for your class, pretend like you're speaking to your class. Don't pretend that there's another audience out there, because that doesn't matter. And I think take feedback from your students. Ask them, what was helpful with what you did, and what could they. I do it all the time. Please critique, my podcast or my video, so you can help me out, because you're trying to serve them. If that's your purpose. Right.
I agree with that. No, I agree with that. I was actually doing, it wasn't even a podcast at the time because it was going back maybe probably 10 years. I was just putting up MP3 recordings. I was literally using an MP3 recorder, and I rigged it so I could wear it as a, put a necklace on it basically, and doing Regents Review back when I was in the classroom. I was doing Regents Review, and I would record it and put it up on the school website. So it was sort of like podcast, with the early version. And it was very helpful, like Nick mentioned, the students were very happy to have basically take you in their pocket. And so they have you whenever they want. So it's 1 o'clock in the morning, and they're whatever reason they're up, they can have access to you. And so you become a 24-hour service to them. And that's very helpful. And we do live in a 24-hour world. I mean, how many times do you get frustrated when something is not available at this point, and you feel like everything is almost owed to you at all times? You should have access to everything whenever you want it. So if I want something, I should be able to go on Amazon at 3 o'clock in the morning and order it and get the ball rolling. And if that's not available to me, I feel like I'm being, restricted in some way, shape, or form. And our kids are no different. I always try to remind people they're people, and not just students. They're actually human beings, and they have the same desires and needs and concerns that we have, and they want to have the same access to the things that they need. And these are the things that they need.
I'm really interested in not so much the flipped classroom, but maybe doing some, I'm a math teacher, and I'm looking to maybe have some, not really videos of myself teaching, but maybe like what you were talking, I don't know what program you were talking about, to record myself maybe writing the math, because you can't really describe math, you have to do math. But one of the things I saw on, I'm not really sure how to get into doing that, so that's one of my questions exactly. But the thing I wanted to say was, there's a website that I use that we have access to at my job called eMath Instruction. That's awesome. And one of the things that they do is they put a QR code on every lesson that links directly to a video. The only problem is that video isn't me. So my students aren't really invested. So that's something I'd like to, obviously I know I could make my own QR code, but I'd like to make my own stuff.
Yeah,
So
well,
I need help.
I can give you some advice, but
I was a math teacher. I worked in a building that was a 6 through 12. And one year I was a split position, a math coach, and in the classroom. So I got pulled out so much that I had to screencast my lessons because that was the only way. Basically, my students were going to get through this year with having my instruction. So if you happen to have a smartboard in your classroom, you can screen record right from your smartboard. So it'll pick up the sound, it'll pick up all of your image directly on your smartboard. The Smart Notebook software has a feature for screen recording as well as the sound.
What about the microphone?
Well, it was picking up the sound off my MacBook. And you can also record right on your Mac. If you have a MacBook, you can use QuickTime. And I used to sometimes do them from home then, and just do the screen.
So if you have a MacBook, how do you write on? Like I have a MacBook, so how am I going to write on that?
I would be able to use the cursor, and you can do it also.
Is that for your iPad?
Show Me.
Yeah, Show
The
Me is what I was gonna
app,
say.
our students are using it as well. Even in elementary school, they're using it, and now that we're getting into getting Apple TVs in the classroom, they're able then to project their work up onto the board. So it's a whole new level of sharing in the classroom.
I think there's a way, because my friend does that on her blog, and she records right off the smartboard her lessons and also still speaking. And I think she just hooks some type of microphone or Bluetooth with it. There's got to be, I think.
Yeah, I think you can use a mic as well.
Yeah.
I think Jing was a site that someone was using who had a PC.
The Catholic teacher in our school started using it, and he does it that way. He wears a mic, he goes in the room by himself, and he just wears a mic, and he writes and records everything, and it's just set up, and more of the tech people in our building kind of helped him set that up. And so then he's able to it's his voice and his handwriting. You don't see yourself. And
Or
he
the
does it that
classroom,
way.
just what's on the screen.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
That's awesome.
Now, if you want to do it in the comfort of your own home and you can't steal a smartboard and put it in the living room, you can. They have some relatively inexpensive pads that you can plug in. They're USB and they come with a stylus, and you can write on them. So you would just connect it to your screen, and then only you can use, for example, QuickTime, and you can make the recording area the size of the screen that is connected to this writing pad, and then you can do your recording right over it. So you could use the input mic that comes with your computer, or like I had mentioned previously, like the Samsung Go mic, very good quality, and it's only like $30-something, fairly affordable. And they have less expensive mics, but I think for the money, the quality on the Samsung is excellent, and it's very highly reviewed. So that's sort of what led us there. So that, with those two pieces of equipment, you can have basically your own studio in your work bag, and you can use that wherever you are.
That would be more comfortable.
Yeah, so you can be in your pajamas and nobody has to know. But just so you know, in terms of how we do the podcast, most of the time we're not in the same room. I'm usually in my house and he's in his house, and we'll record our own tracks independently on GarageBand, and then he'll Dropbox his track to me, and then I'll just lay them both down and I'll edit it.
So the arguments are staged?
No, never. But if he makes a really good point
It's
that
for their
trumps
own
my
safety
point,
that they're in two
sometimes I
different
do edit it
spots.
out. I really, but he doesn't know that.
Now he does.
Yeah, no. But no, they're not staged at all. But the reason why we do that is, one, to record over Skype both tracks between all the lags and and getting dropped and all the problems with Skype and Google Hangout and the delays. It really just doesn't make for a clean recording, and I'm a little bit of I'm a little finicky when it comes to that, and Nick is a little more laid back. So if you are going to record, just a little tip, if you are going to record with two different people in two different spaces, you should have some type of like a clapping sound or some type of sound marker. And this way, when you have the two tracks, the audio tracks, you line them up at the marker, and then the conversation is perfectly synced. Otherwise, if you're just trying to guess, you'll find that he'll say, "Aha, that's funny," and then I haven't even said anything, and it doesn't match up. So we always try to start with a marker or a clap or something like that, and then this way that allows me to sync it up.
He does all that. It's too advanced for me.
Yeah, well, he catches up on Netflix, and I'm slaving away on Final Cut. And then he says, "Have you seen this show?" And I'm like, "No, I've been editing." How could I possibly?
And that's another fight.
That's another
Well,
fight.
thank you very,
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you.
Really
Thank you.
appreciate
This
it.
was fun.
If we could ever help in the future, let us know.
All right, well, the smoke is settled and EdCamp is wrapping up, and it's just the two of us here in the room right now, in the chorus room. And I wanted to get your take, Nick, on the day and what you got out of EdCamp.
Well, number one, I'm thoroughly impressed with the organizers. They, each of them, you can tell, has a passion for education. Incredibly kind people, friendly people, and I really believe that they want to send the message that education is a collaborative effort, and they just want to share as much knowledge as they can possibly do throughout the event. I also really enjoyed just being around so many motivated, inspiring educators. The people that came to our session were tremendous, but even the sessions that I attended, you can tell people were eager, they were enthusiastic, they were curious, and there was all different levels of knowledge when they were walking into the room. When you see people trying to learn Twitter for the first time,
Right.
versus people that have been established users and now want to enhance it for their classroom. When you see people who are just getting a Google account for the first time, and other people that have used it for years, and yet there's no judgment, there's no,
Right.
there's no criticism or critiquing. People were all here to help each other, and a little embarrassed. It's my first time being here. I should have known about this for 2 years earlier.
I know.
Yeah, I have to be honest, but I'll hold myself accountable for that. But I definitely look forward to being part of it again in the future. And as one of our guests said, I think it would be great for us to attend one in another region because it's a nice way to see, to get ideas from people all over the country.
Yeah, I agree. And in some of the rooms that I went into, and I was here with you for many of the sessions, so we didn't get to perhaps see as much as we could have had we not been here. But the participation levels were really, really high, and that is very encouraging to see, because very often in traditional professional development environments, it's a little bit more, or I guess a little bit less, there's a little bit less participation. I'm trying to find a kind way to say it. Some people are just absolutely not wanting to be there, and other people are almost taking offense by having to be there, and a small percentage perhaps are genuinely interested in what the topic is. But here, everybody was choosing where they wanted to be, and if it didn't fit their tastes, they got up and they went to something else and found the thing that worked best for them. So very eye-opening for me, and something for me to think about, and something that I can bring back to my school is the concept of an unconference for our future professional development opportunities. And I think I'd like to really see how the teachers and the chair people and the other administrators in my building would react to something with this kind of format. I think personally it would go over really well, but sometimes in my own head things play out a certain way and not necessarily that same way in reality. But I'd love to at least give it a shot, and if for no other reason than to at least take away the ammunition for those people who feel like the compulsory professional development is really not for them.
And I think the wide sample of topics that were on the board indicate that there was something for everybody here today. And I think everybody's going to do what you just said. They're going to go back to their schools and share this information. And that's how the word gets out, but that's how we really start to see or continue to see improvements all throughout our schools. So it was a great day, and nice to spend the day with you as well, Mr. Essex.
I agree. I feel the same way. And we got lunch, and we didn't have to pay for it. So,
We did get lunch.
is there a better day?
So I'm just going to give my thank you to all of the organizers for welcoming us and letting us have this opportunity, because each of you was very generous with your time and your knowledge.
Agreed. And an extra special shout out to Ed Chemnitzer, who had to deal with me on the phone and via email as I asked my litany of questions, and he answered each and every one of them, and really did a yeoman's duty in getting us set up here and getting us all the things that we needed. So I'm very much grateful to Ed. So thank you very much, Ed. Hopefully you're listening. And our standard parting words: if you'd like to find us on Twitter, you can find us at SOE Podcast. And if you'd like to find us on the web, it's stateofedpodcast.com. Or if you'd like to email us and suggest a topic or a question, ask@stateofed.com. Or you can follow us in the iTunes store under the podcast section. Just search for State of Ed Podcast. So, great day, and had a lot of fun. And thank you, Nick, for bringing everything that you do to the show, and really had a great time.
All right, I'll see you soon.
Have a good one.